Has there ever been a better wrestling rivalry than The Rock versus Steve Austin? Now, you can debate that till the cows come home, but let's face it, it was a pinnacle moment during the Attitude Era, and without Stone Cold Steve Austin and the Brahma Bull, well, the sports entertainment landscape would be totally different today. The real fun of going back and watching it right now is that it is kind of crazy. I mean, Vince Russo was the man behind the WWF scenes, and as we know, he was prone to utter madness sometimes, advertising segments and matches that didn't actually happen. And amazingly, nobody in the late 90s cared because you were locked in, you wanted to hook it to your veins, because you were going to go on an insane ride. So as fascinating as it was in front of the cameras, don't forget how it started too. With the Rattlesnake doing the unthinkable, the man started to outdraw Hulk Hogan. What a crazy world. In order to cement himself at the top of the card, he had to have an iconic bad guy. And wouldn't you know it, fate had decided that's exactly what wrestling deserved. And let's face it too, even with all the bells and whistles in professional wrestling, what we're essentially seeing is athletic rivals trying to outdo each other. It is a simulated sport, but it's the sport who is the best. Steve Austin decided to make his play for that role on January 15, 1996, because of course he debuted in the WWF that night and defeated an unknown Matt Hardy of all people. Let's be honest, he was just a dude, and this confused a lot of fans. If you had been watching behind the scenes in general, you knew that WWF landing Austin was a huge coup, and yet here, he was nothing, just a man in black trunks, and he wasn't allowed to talk. Now, Steve was well on the radar, given that he had been the Rookie of the Year in the 1990 Wrestling Observer Awards back in 1992, and he was an essential part of the WCW War Games match that year. It wasn't just some hidden talent, people knew the deal. That carried on in 1993 as one half of the Hollywood Blondes, as he and Brian Pillman kind of did rewrite what a tag team could be. I mean, that's slightly over the top, but it's far more similar to what we get today, and this was almost 40 years ago. Don't forget too, WCW soon pulled the plug when they got too popular, because the veterans were worried about their spot. That's when you know. By 1994, Austin was tangling with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and more than holding his own. When WCW released him, he went to ECW and proved he was great on the microphone too. So if you were into your wrestling landscape, everybody wanted to see what he was going to do next. Although it was a slightly different journey for a young Rocky Maivia. Now, Cage Match lists his first match against the Brooklyn Brawler, but in subsequent years, this has felt more like a tryout. Pat Patterson and Jim Ross wanted to see what Rocky Johnson's kid was capable of. I mean, clearly the raw talent was there, but as the WWF were taken with what the man had, he was entered into the system right away. There would be no treading the indie boards for one Dwayne Johnson. That, of course, was a stark contrast to Steve Austin, who had debuted in Memphis Wrestling back in 1989. Now, this is the first crazy coincidence, because yep, the WWF did have a relationship with Memphis, and given the lineage, they sent The Rock there to try and get some more experience. I mean, he was just dubbed as Flex Kavana, a young stud ready to take on the world. It was the most standard babyface approach ever. USWA welcomed him too because Dr. Tom Pritchard was involved in his training, and guess who also worked there? That's right, it was one Stone Cold. Now, this was during the time that Steve Austin was living off potatoes because he had no money. He has told this story before. When you do see these comparisons, it almost sums up why their feud worked so well. They had been in the same places, but whereas The Rock already had gotten the deal, Austin was basically a nomad for the large part of his early career. I mean, it's genuinely near perfect, and you have to go to the 23rd of June 1996 after this, because that's been etched into the memory. It was the King of the Ring pay-per-view. Now it was Steve himself who told the WWF he was done with the awful ringmaster gimmick he'd been given. He was inspired by a serial killer known as Richard Kalinsky. I mean, he decided that man was stone cold, or kind of. His wife had come up to him and said, "Please, Steve, drink your tea before it comes stone cold." He said, "Damn it, that can sell me 1,000,000 t-shirts." This was a huge help as well after the WWF creative services had greenlit this new character, but genuinely sent his names such as Chili McFreeze and Fang McFrost. Again, that's not a joke. The way it all worked out, though, was perfect, though, because Steve Austin did win the King of the Ring, but he wasn't meant to. Triple H had long been earmarked for that victory, but after the infamous curtain call incident on 19th of May 1996, he was punished. I mean, somebody had to take his place. Austin got the call. Of course, Jake Roberts was Steve's final opponent during this tournament, and as Jake had been doing a religious gimmick at the time, Austin hit him right there. He finished his promo with Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass." The next day, he was a megastar. Well, actually, that's not true. It's certainly how the poetic version of the story goes, but it isn't accurate. I mean, there were certainly more signs and more positive love towards Steve after this showing, but he wasn't an overnight success. So in many ways, it was like his entire career, because Austin was going to play the long game, which, as we've seen, meant serious longevity from the public. I mean, we all still love him today. What is often forgotten from this promo is that Austin also called out Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog and said whoever was going to walk away with the WWF Championship, well, Austin wanted a piece of them too. Now, you just don't get to say those kind of things in wrestling, so maybe management had finally begun to see the potential. I mean, it'd taken them long enough. I feel like it's important to note this happened before the NWO exploded in WCW, and that's just where wrestling was by November 1996. You can see what's truly happening, especially because Austin marched into the Survivor Series to face Bret Hart. Now, this match itself is a forgotten classic, but it's the build that always needs to be highlighted more. Stone Cold just underlined everything he had in the tank as he cut incredible promos on the Hitman, as Bret sold all this like he was being hunted down by the devil. It also just happens to be when Austin declared putting an S in front of Hitman will give you my overall opinion of the man. And by this stage, he really had put it all together. He walked tough, he looked tough, he wore black trunks, he had black boots, and he had an entrance theme which encapsulated this to an absurd degree. Well, basically, no notes. Austin's performance in the ring too is just faultless, especially when you know the future. I mean, he started to brawl Shaw, but when he reverted to the fundamentals or ensured he came across as a heel, well, that's where he really shined. Fans hadn't totally decided if they loved this guy or hated him, but that was totally cool with Austin. He just knew what he wanted to do. And a pre-neck break Stone Cold is a different beast entirely. Of course, it's also on this pay-per-view where we get the proper debut of Rocky Maivia, and Dwayne Johnson will be the first guy to tell you this wasn't great. It would have been fine a few years prior to this, but it was attitudes like Stone Cold Steve Austin that were shifting how fans approach wrestling. So when they saw Rocky, who was the most 1980s babyface ever, no thanks. Maivia was even told to smile by Vince McMahon regardless what was going on, which was going to be insufferable after a while. But make sure you look past all that. We weren't pushing this guy because it was ha-ha, funny. He had the athleticism, and he just had this evident presence. I mean, there was a reason for it all. If anyone knew that this was going to become a megastar, well, it was probably this dude. The WWF needed this too, because at the end of 1996, the New World Order was going strong on Nitro as they smashed Raw in the ratings. By the 19th of January 1997, this gap had widened so big, what were we going to do at the Royal Rumble? And that's really important for our story, because while brief, during the Rumble match, you do get the first coming together of Steve Austin and The Rock. Now, of course, it's very much a blink and you miss it, but hey, Maivia did try and throw Steve out, and there's more to it than you may think. For the World Wrestling Federation was struggling so much with talent during this time, they filled the Rumble with AAA stars, and we even got fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon. Now, anybody entitled fake is not going to be a plus, and Steve was going to arguably have the biggest night of his career too, because who won the Royal Rumble? Well, it was him, although not quite. It really did cause a stir, though, because while he wasn't upper mid-carder, nobody actually thought he was going to get the victory, especially when Bret Hart had thrown Steve to the floor, but the stupid wrestling officials had missed this, so Austin, because he was meant to be the bad guy, got back into the ring. He threw out Vader, he threw out the Undertaker, and he threw out the Hitman as he stood there with his hand raised. Now, little did the WWF know this was going to be seen by the audience as the coolest thing ever. What a wonderful SOB. It all built to the Final Four pay-per-view next month as those who had been screwed over got their chance for revenge. And yeah, Bret won that match, he became the champion, and he went off to WrestleMania XIII to face Shawn Michaels. Or at least that was the plan on paper. Because soon after this, the Heartbreak Kid lost his smile and left the company for a while. What on earth do we do now? Really, the answer was made on the 23rd of March 1997 as WrestleMania did kick off, because despite all that wiggling and jiggling, Austin and Bret did face off again, and yeah, they had one of the best matches of all time. That's sort of hilarious, given Steve himself has admitted that he didn't have any holds, and yet this was a flipping submission match. The point is, who cares? When two wrestlers have this kind of chemistry, anything is possible. Just go and watch it. Even today, it's utterly sublime. This is mostly due to the fact both guys switch roles mid-fight. Hart is so pissed off and nasty that even in victory, fans don't like him, whereas seeing Austin just fight and fight until he does pass out bleeding, thanks to the sharpshooter, well, it was like, yeah, I'll root for that guy, what a badass. Now, a huge reason for this was how good Steve was at selling, which is not the name of my children's novel. But honestly, you could buy into all of this. It was the antithesis to the hokey product the WWF had been putting out for the past 12 months. It also meant that we could see this shift, and once again, the parallels are hilarious, because The Rock is on this show too, and guess what happened? That's right, the audience isn't buying his act at all. Now, it didn't help that he was facing the Sultan at a WrestleMania, and even then people knew they didn't have to care that much. I mean, everybody had decided they were just done with Rocky one way or the other, so forget being booed, this guy was being told that he sucked, and certain chants even suggested he should die. I mean, that's totally nuts. Before we reached June, Maivia got injured, and if hindsight is anything to go by, yeah, you could call it a blessing in disguise, just because the WWF weren't really planning on pivoting with his babyface turn, and the fans absolutely weren't going to change their minds. The negativity continued come August 3rd, 1997, which was the night of SummerSlam. We all know this. During a match with Owen Hart, Austin is dropped on his head, he broke his neck. How he ever mustered the strength to roll up Hart to begin with, we will never know. And sure, it is one of the worst pins of all time, but that's because we need the context. When fans learned about this, they thought Austin was the most heroic man ever. Now, it would forever force Steve to change his in-ring style in order to deal with this fallout, but this is an underrated piece of proof about why he's one of the GOATs. Because his shift to brawling through his matches wasn't just good, it transformed what a WWF main event fight was going to be for years. I mean, he basically rewrote the rules. Going through such struggles also made him a man of the people because we all understood this kind of pain. Then on the 18th of August 1997, it was time for The Rock's return. The way these two interacted without even knowing, well, it's truly incredible. By this point, Vince McMahon essentially told Rocky he was going to go heel, and to facilitate that, he would join the Nation of Domination. The future Great One had his own plan for this too, because he asked if he could cut his own, I suppose, Austin 3:16 promo. Now, it wasn't as impactful as that, but nor was it meant to be. It was just a way for The Rock to let his intentions be known. And look, he's still speaking in first person here, but the seed was most definitely planted. If his good guy run had been a dud, even now you can wait, there's something here. Especially when he called the fans pieces of trash. Even then, nobody expected him to get to the levels he was going to get to, but before all of that, there was another roller coaster to get past. November 9th, 1997, the Montreal Screwjob. Now, nobody ever wants to talk about this again for obvious reasons, but thankfully it's other matches that we are going to focus on, because Steve Austin regained his Intercontinental title from Owen Hart, whereas The Rock was in a traditional Survivor Series match. Not really much to say about it. The reason we do have to stop here, though, is because the end result was Bret Hart leaving the company. And of course, there's a whole discourse about that elsewhere. But when a Bret Hart does leave the main event scene, all of a sudden a place opens up. We gotta fill some holes. It also ties into the next night on Raw on the 10th of November, because who came face to face? If you said anything other than The Rock and Steve Austin, you're absolutely watching the wrong video. Looking at it now, it feels as if the company was seeing what they could do with these two, and yeah, it's fine. At the time, it may have been good, but they were both going to reach such huge heights. Seeing their early work always feels like a work in progress. I mean, Rocky does make it clear he is the first person to challenge for Austin's IC title. As for Stone Cold, it's all over his face. He loves this. He is ready to heap on the pressure as much as possible. Let's see who can sink, and let's see who swims. He really was destined for the big time. Even then, Steve just insults The Rock's haircut, but you've got to remember what show this was. I mean, imagine going to work when the most tenured worker in the company had just left in the most controversial fashion. There's understandably going to be some distractions backstage. Well, it didn't actually take that long for these two to get in the ring. It happened at December 7th, 1997 on the In Your House D-Generation X pay-per-view. And surprise, surprise, it was filled with smoke and mirrors. This was mostly due to the fact that Austin's neck wasn't 100%. So before this, The Rock had stolen the Intercontinental title, and he walked to the ring with it, whereas Steve Austin decided to get to the squared circle, he would come down in a pickup truck. As the Nation of Domination were involved too, they just bump around for the rattlesnake, and honestly, this is wrestling. You can see all the parts coming together to make it work. And in total, I think Austin only goes to the mat twice. None of that matters though, and D'Lo Brown is totally crazy, taking a back body drop onto the hood of that vehicle before the bionic redneck turned his attention back to the soon-to-be People's Champion, 1, 2, 3. Now, this mostly happened because the WWF had already realized, man, this Austin has outgrown the mid-card, especially because the fans are eating up every single thing this man does. Vince McMahon had clocked onto this too, but by the same time, he had also noticed Dwayne Johnson. That was all going to come into play on the 8th of December 1997 Raw, because Austin and Rocky do come face to face again. But this time, The Rock goes totally off in third person, but there was something else happening on the other side of the ring. McMahon himself was threatening Austin for daring to drive that pickup truck to a match. Don't you do it, because there will be consequences. Now, Steve is such an anti-hero, he even asked Vince, what are you going to do, fire me? And The Rock joins in too. He's like, yeah, fire his ass. That made Stone Cold laugh. Now, I remember this at the time, and it was wild back then, because Stone Cold Steve Austin just gives up his IC title to The Rock before leaving him laying. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. Nobody thought this was bad because the love for Austin was so strong that when he informed us he had bigger fish to fry or going after the WWE title, well, it's a cliche, but we all went hell yeah. And sure, this was just a way to protect Austin and get him to where he needed to go, but again, nobody gave a flub. It's where we wanted the guy to be, so however you need to get there. It's also crazy how many of these famous moments were then building up, because boom, the December 15th, 1997 Raw, and the now iconic Vince McMahon promo, good guys and bad guys, they are officially passé. That's insanely followed up with Steve Austin hurling The Rock's new Intercontinental Championship into the flipping river. So there you go. None of this was lip service or empty words. Vince McMahon meant it. It was also Austin just being allowed to go full rebel, and by the time 1998 rolled around, forget about it. Because on the 18th of January, it was the Royal Rumble, and there wasn't even a guessing game to who was going to win. Steve Austin had to be the victor, and if not, why not? The WWF knew that as well, which is why the story wasn't, oh, is Steve going to win? It's how is he going to survive? Because every other person had decided to put a target on his back. It just meant he was going to have to go through 29 people, and when the Rattlesnake came out at number 24, he threw over 7 guys, which basically summed up where he was. The only real drama is that it does come down to him and The Rock. And we all know what happened there, but again, go and listen to the fans, they wanted it. Later on the same show, Shawn Michaels would suffer a horrible back injury during his casket match with The Undertaker. And once again, that does tie in. It's like Bret Hart's departure. All of a sudden, we are in an even bigger need to plug the gaps. It's also on the 19th of January 1998 Raw when Mike Tyson was brought in. And look, that was going to be huge anyway because it was Mike Tyson. But yeah, he does go head-to-head with Steve Austin on that night. Many people do point to this as the moment the WWF really ramped up, because it got so many eyeballs on it. It also alerted people to who Stone Cold was, and he was now super beloved. And the shoving match that followed made headlines, as did Mike eventually joining DX. Now, that was all kinds of ridiculous, but in hindsight, the whole thing is box office, because what was the end game? Mike Tyson endorsing Austin. It's amazing when you go back through this now, because we didn't have to wait at all. I mean, by the 23rd of March 1998 Raw, or a week before WrestleMania, we are doing The Rock versus Steve Austin. And yeah, The Rock is still the IC champion. Now, none of that matters because Steve Austin is such a bigger deal, he has to get the victory. But to see the shift from the last time they fought, their roles are way more established, and forgive the pun, but the attitude is there. I mean, there's no chin locks, they just kick each other's ass. And by this stage, Jim Ross is always saying that Steve Austin could be the most popular superstar of all time. We then get to March 29th, 1998 at WrestleMania 14 when Mike Tyson did count the 3 and raise Austin's hand as he won his first WWE World title. And no wonder there was mainstream appeal. Listen to what I just said, and did a buy rate of 809,000 buys. And The Rock also defended his IC title on this show when Ken Shamrock got disqualified. This was also the event when The Rock did that sit-down interview with Jennifer Flowers, and he mocked everyone. I mean, the character shift really is quite something to behold. He also refers to himself in the third person about 45,000 times, and he knows what he's doing. He also makes a ton of sexual innuendo because, of course, that's just what we did in the late 90s. It's not like the WWF kept them apart for long either, because we get to the May 11th, 1998 Raw, and Vince Russo was clearly having the time of his life. Because the match on this evening is genuinely Austin and Vince McMahon versus Rocky and Nation stablemate D'Lo Brown. Thankfully, it is explained in the sense Steve knows this is bogus. And yeah, it's bogus. McMahon just wanted Austin to get his ass beat. And what better way to do that than to book him in essentially what is a handicap match. The other idea was to sell the Rattlesnake as a superhuman though, because it was mission accomplished, Jim Ross just goes nuts on the call, telling the audience to acknowledge the fact that Steve Austin, 1, won't quit, and 2, he's beating up multiple people. The ratings are shifting at this point too, because WWF has found the answer in the rattlesnake, and a few weeks before this, on the April 13th Raw, Nitro's 83 winning streak had finally come to an end, and don't forget the advertised match to draw that number was Austin versus McMahon. It didn't even actually happen. But were the fans mad? Nope, they sucked it all up. From there we went full sports entertainment, as by the July 27, 1998 shows we had entered our first Can They Coexist storyline with Austin and the flipping Undertaker. I mean, that made it even funnier because no, maybe don't trust the undead zombie. Is the opponents once again with the future lied because they defended their newly won tag team championships against Owen Hart? And wait for it, The Rock. August 10th continued all this, and the tag belts had now been extended to a 4-way match. And surprise, surprise, Steve and the Dead Man lost. The Rock and Austin clashed once again, and there was a reason for this. It was time for SummerSlam. Now, a lot has been said about the Stone Cold Taker match, but the numbers do not lie. It drew a whopping 655,000 buys, and the Highway to Hell branding was awesome. The WWF felt cool. Now, Austin himself hates this bout due to getting concussed halfway through. And yeah, I get that. When you watch it today, it's impossible to miss it, but I never noticed it as a kid, and in fact, this was one of the first matches where I was terrified about wrestling. I honestly thought Steve could lose, and I wasn't going to be able to handle it. Don't let it happen. Of course, lower down the card, The Rock was also making waves and really sealed up a classic. The ladder match with Triple H for the IC title. It's important to remember ladders weren't overdone in 1998, and I do believe this was the first time since 1995 that the World Wrestling Federation had decided to do one. It just meant the fans were even more excited, and you can probably call this The Rock's first classic match because both guys go out there and they just absolutely kill each other. Doesn't even matter that The Rock loses, it's like his WrestleMania 13. Even in defeat, his stock was about to go through the roof. It's why the industry was abuzz, because it was a bit like, wait a minute, we may actually have a promotion that has 2 top guys. And make no mistake, Austin is still the man, there's no question about that, and he's even featured on MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch, but you can smell it. The irony. On wrestling television, he's also feuding with Kane and The Undertaker after a great program with Dude Love, and that did kind of sum it up. Stone Cold had become such a monster, we had to take 2 massive men and say go after him. Really, the audience wouldn't accept anything else, and it is mad because Austin referees a match between the Brothers of Destruction at Judgment Day 1998, and at In Your House Breakdown, they both pinned Steve. I mean, it was shenanigans central. Could also probably argue if Stone Cold hadn't been involved, it wouldn't have worked. But he was involved, so it was fine. The Rock is also sort of finding his way during this period too, as he slowly left the Nation and went toe-to-toe with Mark Henry. But by this point, yes, management had realized that Rocky had all the potential to also be the dude. And as Bruce Pritchard has talked about on his podcast, Austin was more than aware of this, and he would also apparently walk around saying, The Rock, he's just a dude that has a bunch of silly catchphrases. So essentially, the rivalry was ready to explode. It all came to a head on the 15th of November Survivor Series and the Deadly Game tournament. And most remember this because, yes, it could be Vince Russo's finest swerve ever. So after acting like he was ready to go full-on babyface, the Great One turned his back on the fans, joining Vince McMahon and joining Shane McMahon, and essentially starting the corporation. It really was masterful because nobody saw it coming. And while training the Montreal boards was already a little bit eye-rolling, it worked and it set up so many post-stories. I mean, look at poor Mankind, he got wrecked too. Austin was involved in this tournament as well, and even when he gets screwed, he's totally protected because, again, it made sense. You didn't think he was an idiot. Our new bad guy group had just left no stone unturned. We should hate The Rock. In any other era, the WWF never would have done this either because The Rock was so hot by the end of the year. But once again, it was all logical. Why bother making him the good guy? Because we already have a mega good guy, so this guy can be our mega bad guy. Also, Steve Austin needed an arch nemesis, so really it was just lightning in a bottle, and fate had approved it. Fans have also felt genuinely betrayed what The Rock had done, so he was going to get all the heat. And as for Steve, well, we loved him anyway, and now we wanted him to commit murder. Kinda. It is a shame more people don't discuss what happened 24 hours later on the 16th of November because, yeah, it was The Rock versus Steve Austin. I mean, given what had gone down and their current star level, this was miles above what we had seen previously. although it also did give us a massive plot hole. The justification for this, thanks to returning Shane McMahon in the lead up to the pay-per-view, was that he was going to help Austin. And then, of course, at the Survivor Series, he turned his back because it proved to be a ruse, but the pre-promised title shot still rang true. I don't even know if that made any sense coming out of my mouth. The thing is, because so much was being thrown at you, nobody really cared. And look at Austin and The Rock. They were riding so high, it was like getting mysterious free pizza. I don't know where it came from, but at least I could eat. Stone Cold even has the championship won here before getting dicked over by Ken Shamrock, who was also going to join the corporation. And then The Undertaker whams Austin with a shovel for the DQ. The 90s, everyone. The Raw rating is absolutely massive though at a 5.5, which just showed where the WWF was going. And it was the same on the 7th of December Raw. With a need for friends, Austin teamed with Mankind to face the Dead Man, and of course The Rock joined at the hip. They're also over, they barely do any wrestling, which is amazing to see, and a few days later, on the 13th of December, Rocky gets a huge honor. He has a flipping pay-per-view named after him in your house rock bar. It all ties into as Austin defeats The Undertaker in a Buried Alive match, whereas The Rock does away with Mankind, sort of. Mick Foley actually gets the win, but as Rocky had passed out due to the mandible claw, new best friend Vince McMahon decides this ain't fair. He reverses the decision. Of course, instantly you will think of the finish to the Stone Cold match at WrestleMania 13, but that's where we've moved to. The time of don't worry about it, and I do get that too. Go and listen to people. Nobody does. I mean, the tomfoolery was there for one massive reason. The 4th of January 1999 Raw, for example, and arguably the biggest pop in WWF history. Because rightfully getting a rematch, Mankind does challenge The Rock for his WWE title, and my word, the corporation, Degeneration X, everybody else, if you had any sort of name, you interfered in this for one sole reason. When Stone Cold Steve Austin music hit towards the end of the thing, you have never seen fans react like it. It's because they knew he was here for revenge, and after ruining The Rock with a steel share shot, he quite literally throws Mankind over the corporate champ, and good grief, Mick Foley won. Now, this is truly one of the best moments ever, because nobody ever thought Mankind would be the dude at the top of the WWF, even though he had proven himself time and time again. If somebody also tells me scientifically this is the longest sustained babyface pop ever, I'd believe it. When the grass bakes, people in the crowd actually fall to the floor. The aftermath is that we have now obviously teased Rock versus Austin for WrestleMania 15, and even at the Royal Rumble on the 24th of January 1999, you can't stop that momentum, but believe you me, the WWF tried. Because the whole thing is situated around Austin versus McMahon, with Vince and his goons screwing Steve out of the match. Now that part was perfectly okay, but do you know who wins the thing? That's right, Vince McMahon. Nobody needed that. Although, to be fair, the WWE did this because they had a pay-per-view before WrestleMania in February, known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And yes, that's the name of the show, good grief. It's sort of crazy because on essentially a B event, we are doing Austin versus McMahon finally one-on-one, and it's in a damn steel cage. Of course, the buy rate is way above the usual, and there was a stipulation. If Steve did beat Vince, he would head to the WrestleMania main event. And that, of course, did go down with shenanigans. The Big Show debuted, hurling Stone Cold through the cage for good measure, but it's those wonderful WWF rules. Because Austin's feet do hit the floor first, he wins. It does sort of sum up the booking in 1999, which was just crazy. I mean, look at the WWF title match that also happened at the Royal Rumble. It's totally infamous now. The Rock and Mankind did face off in an I Quit match, with Rocky murking Mick Foley in the head way too many times with a steel chair. I mean, it's a little bit traumatizing. The finish was still over the top as the corporation played an audio tape of Mankind over the PA of Foley saying "I quit" from an earlier promo, so once again he got screwed. It was just a way to get the title back on The Rock while also creating the conversation, I suppose. The issue was, while Mankind did mention it on TV, it was glossed over so fast. Any kind of long-term story had long been nullified. We were just going week to week to week. It was just more evidence, though, that the star power of both of our top guys was enough. But we had set the scene. The Rock was insane, Austin was ready, he wanted revenge, so nobody else was going to close the biggest show of 1999. It was March 15th when we ramped this up, because Austin teamed with Mankind to face The Rock and the Big Show. I mean, that one doesn't take a genius. Fans are up for this though, even though we all know there wasn't going to be a finish. And no, there was not a finish. It was then the 23rd of March Raw, which was going to go down forever because it was the night of the beer bath. And you know this is huge because it happened 26 years ago, and yet it's still featured in video packages today. This was also the go-home promo before WrestleMania 15, so here comes that word again. Many parts of this were just perfect. It's also the fact it's not just The Rock who gets it, but the McMahons too, and the crowd, as always. They just wanted Steve to be on top, even if he had to stretch reality. At this stage, it felt like it could run forever as well, and Vince swimming in that beer has become an iconic image too. And then days later, it was time for WrestleMania. Now, aside from Austin regaining the WWF title, we really did draw a line under what the new main event was going to be. You brawled, you threw punches, and you just added in as much personality as humanly possible. It's so successful, you can still see elements of it today. It's also a tiny reminder that having a mega over babyface means twists and turns aren't necessary. The fans were just desperate for Stone Cold to win, and when he does, there are no notes, because everybody is just so damn happy, including the 863,000 people that bought this on pay-per-view. At the time, WrestleMania 15 was the most successful event in company history, and then there's the TV ratings, the merchandise sales, the WWF is on fire, so there's no way you can pivot away from this feud. So we don't. April 12th, 1999 sees The Rock prove he remembers the past as he takes the newly formed Smoking Skull belt that Steve had made to crown his victory, and he threw it in the river. To ensure he goes one step further, he also hurls Austin into the water, and yeah, we treat this like he's been killed. What the actual flub? It doesn't matter because anything The Rock says during this time is so funny you just go with it. And this was all actually going to be the setup for Backlash, because a week later on the 19th of April Raw, we took this further and The Rock actually hosts a mock funeral for a now seemingly deceased Steve Austin. Not entirely sure that came from Lou Thesz. As ever, the idea of all of these skits was just to get bigger pops for Austin. So yes, surrounded by the buried alive set, Steve does return and people lose their mind. Austin even crushes The Rock's Lincoln Continental under a monster truck. That may be the greatest visual metaphor. Backlash is soon after this on the 25th of April, and do not get it twisted, this was actually the superior match compared to WrestleMania 15. And it's not because the first one is bad either, they were just getting better and better as a pairing, and we also threw in Shane McMahon to build a heel referee, just to give you an element of doubt, but honestly, it doesn't matter, because The Rock and Austin bump each other around or whatever they can find, and this is also the evening when Rocky took over camera work too. The audience couldn't believe he dared do it. Some were actually quite surprised at the relatively low buy rate of 390,000, but it was still way above past projection. The real problem was trying to tell the fans The Rock still was a heel, because he wasn't, as the man had become far too entertaining. Therefore, on the May 3rd, 1999, we formed the corporate ministry. The best thing I can say about that is I had an oddly catchy theme tune. The whole purpose, though, was to get rid of Stone Cold Steve Austin and allow the corporation to turn their back on The Rock. Don't forget, it was me, Austin, it was me all along. This is also when storylines were just getting totally absurd, so on a Raw, we do The Rock versus Steve Austin for 22 seconds before the Suits and the Druids, who are meant to be serving as lumberjacks, essentially kick off a massive brawl. That's the end of the show. This absolute roller coaster would continue through SummerSlam on the 22nd of August 1999, because in any other universe, we'd have done the match again, but not in this one. The Rock was a good guy by this point, and Austin was on top of the world, so we still need to decide what to do with the WWF title. It did mean the main event was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Triple H versus Mankind. This is much talked about even today, because there are a lot of rumors. It is said that Mankind was only added to this after Austin decided, I don't want to drop the belt to Triple H, so Mick Foley was used as a go-between. He would win it, and then Triple H would beat him. Now, what the truth is, we don't know, but on paper, this was very important. We needed a brand new top heel, and nobody was better suited to that than the game. The Rock, meanwhile, had the task of trying to elevate Billy Gunn, who he met on this show. That didn't go great. The Great One destroyed him on a microphone on Raw, so WWF pretty much gave up on this after SummerSlam. At least we tried. Schoolyards are now filled with arguments about whether Steve Austin or The Rock is the best of all time, or at least who's the best on TV. And actually, that was about to become an easier argument. By late 1999, Austin's neck injuries were so bad, he had to take some time off, which is what we did at the Survivor Series. Rikishi ran him over in a car, and of course he did that for The Rock. Now obviously the WWF is a worse place for not having Austin, but we've talked about it. The Rock is more than ready to carry this weight on his shoulders, which is why for the next 6 months he does exactly that. If this had happened in 1998, it would have been a different story. It also means that we now jump to April 30th, 2000 and Backlash. And the whole pay-per-view was built around the return of Steve Austin, especially because at his Miss WrestleMania, Triple H had become the first heel to walk away with his World Championship. We needed some joy. The buy rate for Backlash as well was a crazy 650,000 purchases, which was only beaten once by one other non-4 big pay-per-view. And there's huge consequences here. Austin attacks the corporate idiots who are aligned with Triple H, allowing The Rock to become the WWF champion again. It's also quite clear Steve is not at 100% here, which meant the plot thickened. And it also meant Austin wouldn't be back full-time until Unforgiven on the 24th of September. By that time, the company was totally different. Once the depleted roster had now been bolstered by the likes of Kurt Angle and the Radicals who had jumped ship from WCW. Plus, you had Chris Jericho, who had finally found his feet in the WWF, and The Rock and Triple H had proved, we can carry a main event program. Even the tag team division had stars such as Edge and Christian and the Hardys, because they were getting the love. But of course, Stone Cold just beat up everybody because he is magic, and within 6 weeks we were back to it. The 2nd November 2000 SmackDown, The Rock called out his old rival. This tied directly into the fact that Rikishi had said that he tried to murder Austin for The Rock, and the People's Champ wanted to make it clear, no, he did not. That one makes sense, otherwise you gotta go to jail. And this face-to-face is mostly important due to the fans, because it is equally split in terms of who they want to cheer for, which is surely when the WWF knew what to do come WrestleMania 17. There is then a quick jump to the UK and the Rebellion pay-per-view on the 2nd of December, which does see The Rock versus Austin versus Rikishi versus Kurt Angle for the WWF. But as a man who was there, trust me, this was nothing more than a house show. And of course, we got to the 10th of December and it was time for Armageddon and the now sort of legendary 6-man Hell in a Cell match. I mean, it's really quite incredible. This was even more true because we were pushing the realms of sanity, but Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Kurt Angle, The Undertaker, and Rikishi decide to make this into a mini classic, and they do. Guess what it sort of builds to as well? A battle at the end of the match between The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, that's almost the reason Kurt is able to walk away with the gold again. There's too much hate elsewhere. The 2001 Royal Rumble takes all of this and runs with it, especially because the final 3 is Steve Austin, The Rock, and Kane. And the Big Red Machine may feel strange in that, but as well as breaking Rumble records with a total of 11 eliminations, he also helps with the drama provided for The Rock and Stone Cold. Because Kane does do away with the Great One thanks to Austin, and just as he's about to do the same, nope, Austin pulls it off, he is headed back to WrestleMania. Naturally, questions are then hurled into the air because on paper that means it's Stone Cold versus Kurt Angle when we get another turn. The 5th of February 2001 Raw. Because it turns out Rikishi was sort of telling the truth, although it wasn't The Rock that ordered the hit, it was Triple H. Now Steve Austin has to deal with that guy too, and it all leads to No Way Out on the 25th of February 2001. And at the same time, The Rock has somehow confangled his way into a title match against Kurt Angle. The ramifications here. Not only does The Rock come out as champion, but Austin loses the 3 stages of Hell match to Triple H. And look, that finish is deliberately done to make it dubious. Hunter sort of falls on Steve to get the 1, 2, 3, but still, it's quite clear this was planning for post-WrestleMania at the time, but even then it was quite weird. The thing is, once again, everybody was so over it was just accepted, which was sort of the same on March the 12th. Because a rightfully forgotten part of the build to Austin versus Rock 2 is Deborah being aligned with The Rock, and no, I'm not kidding. It was the dastardly Vince McMahon who had ordered Steve's real wife to manage Rocky, and well, it's just bad. I mean, on this Raw, Angle still had beef with the man who took his title, and while their match ends in a DQ, afterwards Kurt attacks Deborah. What are we doing? For no reason, Austin then decides this is The Rock's fault, so he stuns his ass, and go look at Steve's face during this. He knows it was utterly ridiculous, and before long, we just dropped the whole thing and we tried to forget about it. Jump forward a week and The Rock is now teaming with Chris Jericho to take on William Regal, Kurt Angle, and Chris Benoit. But Jericho is more interested in reminding Regal he drank some pee. I don't know what else to tell you. Stone Cold then stops The Rock from being mugged by these 3 guys, but only so he can beat him up instead. As we then do have to balance the books, it's Austin that gets dropped by the Rock bottom, so calling this a trade-off more than a story is fair. It's almost as if the star power of both is making it hard to iron out. Even though we are talking about 2 of the biggest stars in the industry though, that was never going to last. On March 22nd, 2001, they do sit down for that now legendary interview with Jim Ross. And honestly, The whole build was about to blow up. Even today, it's considered a masterclass in how to make a wrestling match important. JR is just absolutely excellent. He grounds things in reality and makes the WWF title feel like it's the be-all and end-all. And you can even see the seeds of Austin's heel turn being planted, even though nobody was ever going to believe that. But he needs to finish this more than The Rock can ever imagine. And as for Dwayne Johnson, well, he's fantastic too, and the tension is through the roof. By the time it's done, nothing else was needed to be said. Terrible turn of phrase, but it feels real. If you wanted to believe these two hated each other, it's not that hard. In their final meeting before the pay-per-view on March 29th, we kept it simple as well, because a beer bash was also the most intense thing you'd ever seen in your life. Of course, that brought us to WrestleMania 17 on Sunday the 1st of April. I'm just gonna say it perfection. Even the Limp Bizkit My Way video has stood the test of time, such was the expertise here, and likely why the pay-per-view did over 1 million buys. It truly did feel like the biggest thing that was happening on planet Earth. And of course, there's only one big question hanging over it all. What the flub do you do afterwards? It was something that Steve Austin had also been pondering, because you couldn't have them both do the same role. They were gonna butt heads consistently, and not in the right way, so a decision was gonna be made. And tonight was the night. For all of that, however, the match itself was just electric, with both men kicking out of each other's finishes so many times, it would ruin many a main event in the future. You can't fault it here though, because the atmosphere is just on a different level, and why many people call this the peak of the Attitude Era, and also the end of it. I mean, what could possibly be better than this? Of course, the ending will long be disputed, although Austin did preempt it. In his need to be the WWF champion again, he aligned himself with Vince McMahon as the Astrodome cheered anyway. You know the deal. Stone Cold's performance does deserve serious praise because he is totally unhinged as he destroys The Rock with chair shot after chair shot. But the truth is, it was all misjudged. Fans didn't want to heel Steve Austin, and by Backlash, which was the next pay-per-view numbers were just 375,000 buys. That was not the plan. April 2nd, 2001 still brought us the rematch, and yes, that was the next night on Raw. I mean, why wait? Of course, we threw it in a steel cage, but there was one final twist. I don't think anybody assumed based on what happened pre-Mania this was going to go down, but Triple H arrived, who originally was going to become a good guy. Well, he decided he didn't want to do that. He helped Austin, and the two-man power trip was born. Now, they weren't one of the coolest groups you'd ever seen in your life, because just look at them. When you do realize what the first idea was, well, that makes way more sense. The Rock was going to be written off until the summer because he was going to film The Scorpion King, and that would leave a bad guy Austin and a good guy Triple H, and they could do a program, but nope, we're going to do this instead. WCW had also been purchased during this period, having Steve be their leader, as opposed to Mr. WWF, is utterly ludicrous. He is absolutely brilliant in his role. People don't praise it enough. There's still so much madness even when the promotion came to the UK for Rebellion on November 2nd, 2001, because yes, we did headline with Austin versus The Rock. Now, in terms of the match, that's as great as it always was, but now Alliance teammate Kurt Angle helps Steve retain his title. That's just a dumb thing to say. I don't want to get sidetracked here, but you have WCW versus the WWF, and the three main parts are all World Wrestling Federation guys. That was never the dream. Just to prove that the WWF was trying to figure this out in real time, we get to the November 12th Raw. On that show, General Manager Mick Foley even says, man, there's too many titles, and it's dragging wrestling down, and the episode ends with Austin and The Rock doing a sing-along. Once again, I'm not joking. And look, it's way too entertaining, but it's not what people hoped for and expected either. Just kind of sum this all up, we didn't really know what we were doing. Austin was still a merch machine, because of course, what was about to become a thing, and that continues to be around today. Which is astonishing, really. This was a quarter of a century ago. I think some of the disappointment came from the fact this was their first war of words since WrestleMania 17, but it's just not what people were hoping for. The end of this part of their feud also ties into the end of the invasion angle as well, and you could say we're being too harsh here. Survivor Series on November the 18th does a monster number, as Team WWF does fight Team WCW and ECW for brand supremacy. Naturally, Kurt Angle betrayed Austin because he had been the mole the whole time, allowing The Rock to win and get the pin. He pinned Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't want to repeat myself, but yes, Once again, it's 3 WWF dudes involved. Right after this, we basically turn Stone Cold Steve Austin face again, which feels infuriating, all things considered, which is the same for the 19th of November Raw, because Ric Flair turns up, and why wasn't he there 6 months before? Steve then picks the Nature Boy over McMahon as those two start to feud over who owns the company. And in your spare time, sit down and try and figure that all out, because no, that also makes no sense. 2 + 2 = potato. Of course, things do go quiet at this point, although there are a few struggles for the WWE. The blow up on May 31st, 2002. Steve Austin called the Bite This Chat show and said, "I think the creative sucks." That's basically a quote to he was pissed off. The 10th of June Raw is even worse because after hearing he would be losing to Brock Lesnar in the King of the Ring qualifiers, Austin decides he's not coming to work. Now, Steve himself has long said this was a massive error and he probably shouldn't have done it, but he did make a good point. You don't do Lesnar versus Austin on a random Raw. That's the end, not the beginning. And as Austin also felt like this may be a punishment for what he had said on Bite This, well, the wheels had started to fall off. Given their relationship too, The Rock was then told to walk out and rip Austin to shreds. And sheesh, the current tagline was "Get the F out" due to the WWF becoming the WWE. And this was used to instruct the fans that Steve had taken his ball and gone home. I mean, you've never seen an on-screen burial like it with somebody who was one of the biggest stars the industry had ever seen. And from there, silence. Austin does take this advice and he does stay home before the obvious happened. Everybody made up. That's why doing such a hit job was dumb, because wrestling is the king of never say never, and on the 23rd of February 2003, the Rattlesnake was back at No Way Out to kick Eric Bischoff's ass. I mean, why not? I mean, a big reason is the WWF didn't know what to expect, but also the worst news was slowly becoming a very real situation. Steve's neck was ruined. The next night on Raw, The Rock finds himself at a loose end too after Booker T threw him out of a WWF title #1 contender battle royal. But because he is now the brand new Hollywood Rock, he has figured it out. The truth is, Austin is to blame for this, because he got voted the superstar of the decade, and not him. All of a sudden, they were back together. A week later, on the 3rd of March, Raw, Austin is also back properly in tone too, because everybody is on his list, and that includes the entire locker room taking a stunner. But if you wanted to make the case that he feels a little bit different here, I do think that's fair. It's almost like he knows. The Rock interrupts like any good heel should do during his babyface promo. And yeah, we just talked about it. This was Hollywood Rock, which was fantastic, one of the best characters ever, but it was also the start of him leaving WWE too. I mean, the way these two guys were linked forever is just ridiculous. He challenges Austin to a match at WrestleMania 19 before general manager Eric Bischoff, for no reason, gave Rocky a choice. You can face Booker T one last time, and if you do win, then it's Austin or Triple H for the championship. I'll let you pick. 7 days pass, and on the March 10th Raw, The Rock is such an asshole, he tells Bischoff, "Nah, I'm gonna fight the Hurricane instead." Although thank goodness we did do this. The chemistry between The Rock and the Hurricane is wonderful, and gave the superhero a moment of a lifetime, thanks to Austin causing the distraction. 1, 2, 3. And now The Rock versus Austin is the only option. March 24th was the night of The Rock concert 2, which has been copied ever since. And let's just give this man his due. If sports entertainment is a real thing, it's all encapsulated in this. It is just so damn fun. Even if The Rock keeps being an asshole, and when he gets booed, well, you can just tell he totally gets this. And Dwayne Johnson is having the time of his life. His facial expressions, especially when Austin destroys his one-of-a-kind guitar, I mean, it's just the best thing you could ever hope to see. And it's the final segment before WrestleMania 19, so good grief. Sadly, things then took a terrible turn for the worse because of all the stories of Austin being in bad shape medically before the pay-per-view. And honestly, if this was going down today, I don't think this match ever would have happened. Steve was in the hospital on Saturday night. Somehow I did get the green light, and I tell you, it is great. And of course, you can say maybe it ranks 3rd when it comes to their WrestleMania classics, but that's not an insult. And the second half of this especially, well, it's just them playing the greatest hit. The finisher kickouts are effective as ever, and for the first time during their feud, it is The Rock with the 3rd rock bottom that finally beats Austin. On the grandest stage of them all, he did it. It's much better viewed today than it was at the time because we have all the details, and in many ways, it's a sad, sad ending. Nobody knew what was going down or that Austin was about to walk off into the sunset, although us not knowing could have been the most badass thing ever. Although Dwayne Johnson clearly has this information. He whispers something into Steve's ear for a long old time, and you could tell the Rattlesnake is moved by it. It of course drew a line under their feud, and even with some of the bizarre turns, it's just all time. The feelings it does drum up are almost more powerful in 2025, and if you've never experienced it, you're in for a treat. Just prepare yourself before WrestleMania 19, because when you know, it hits hard. We are never going to get anything like this ever again, though, because it's too unique, and it just so happens to feature two of the greatest superstars the sports entertainment world has ever seen. So if you want to say it is absolutely the best, this bald a-hole ain't gonna disagree with you. Now, of course, please do let us know your thoughts about Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock, and if you'd like to see more of these videos, like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video if for some reason you want more content. But thanks for sticking with me, my friends. I'll see you on the next one.